It started as an ordinary day, but in minutes it turned into a nightmare. A black man watched in disbelief, as those sworn to protect lives stood back, their arrogance and prejudice sealing his fate. His cries for help were ignored, his dignity stripped away, and what followed revealed a truth too shocking to forget. How could something so cruel happen in plain sight? And why did it take a devastating twist for the world to finally pay attention? This is the story they never expected to come to light. Before the fire, before the headlines, he was just a man living his life like anyone else. A father, a neighbor, a leader who had worked hard to earn the respect of his community. Most evenings, he enjoyed the quiet comfort of his home, the laughter of children playing nearby, the smell of dinner drifting from open windows. His world wasn't perfect, but it was his sanctuary, the place he had built with patience and pride. But in a country where skin color can still decide whose voice is heard and whose is ignored, safety was always fragile. He never imagined that the very people sworn to protect would one day turn their backs on him. He never imagined that arrogance and prejudice would reduce his years of hard work to ashes. What began as an ordinary night, one that should have passed like any other, was about to become the moment that revealed a deeper, uglier truth. And when it came, it would expose not only the bias in their hearts, but the dangerous cost of indifference. The night began quietly, but the first signs of trouble came faster than anyone expected. Smoke curled into the sky, thick and unforgiving, as flames licked at the walls of his home. He dialed for help with urgency in his voice, knowing that every second mattered. The fire station was close, help should have arrived in minutes, but when the trucks finally pulled up, something was wrong. The firefighters stepped out slowly, their faces hardened, their movements casual, too casual for the emergency unfolding before their eyes. He waved his arms, shouting, pleading for them to act, but instead of rushing to douse the flames, they lingered, whispering among themselves. Their eyes carried a dangerous mix of arrogance and indifference, as if the burning home before them wasn't worth the effort. Neighbors gathered, confused and horrified. The children cried, yet the men in uniform stood back, hoses idle, as though the fire belonged to someone less deserving of their help. His voice cracked with desperation. Please, my home, my family's memories, everything is inside. Still they didn't move. Minutes stretched into eternity. The flames grew louder, consuming walls, consuming dreams. The crowd's anger simmered. Murmurs turned into shouts. Disbelief turned into outrage. Why weren't they doing anything? Why was a man begging for the most basic help, only to be ignored by those trained and paid to provide it? His heart pounded. Was it his skin color? Was it their prejudice so deep that they would rather let everything burn than lift a hand for him? Every unanswered second made the truth harder to deny. And then, in the midst of destruction, one firefighter smirked. It wasn't exhaustion. It was arrogance, cold and deliberate. That single look told him everything. They didn't see him as worthy of saving. The fire roared higher. The night split between flames and fury, and the weight of injustice pressed harder on his chest. His pleas turned into demands, his fear into anger. Neighbors began recording, their cameras capturing every second of this betrayal. But what none of them knew, what even the firefighters failed to realize, was that the man they dismissed wasn't just another faceless victim. His identity, once revealed, would shatter their smug indifference and ignite a storm far larger than the fire, consuming his home. The night wasn't just about flames anymore. It was about a truth that could no longer be ignored, and a reckoning that was only beginning. *Duzud. The fire was no longer just flames. It was a monster swallowing his life whole. He stood there, helpless, as every photo, every keepsake, every piece of his history turned to ash. And the men who could stop it, they stood back, arms folded, faces carved with arrogance. The weight of injustice pressed against his chest, harder than the smoke choking his lungs. Neighbors shouted. Some even tried to step forward, but the firefighters barked at them to stay back, as if protecting the fire, not the people. Phones captured every second. Voices screamed for action, but nothing broke their wall of indifference. His pleas became raw, guttural, tears streaking through ash and sweat. Still they refused. Then came the turning point. A council member rushed onto the scene, breathless, recognizing him instantly, not as a nameless victim, but as the mayor of the very city these men swore to serve. The crowd gasped, murmurs surged like a wave, And suddenly the arrogance on the firefighters' faces faltered. Too late. Because by then, the truth was out. Everyone watching knew they hadn't failed by accident. They had chosen. They had weighed his worth, and found it less than the fire itself. The betrayal wasn't just negligence. It was racism laid bare, exposed under the glow of burning flames. He stared at the collapsing walls of his home, his sanctuary reduced to rubble, and knew this moment could not be ignored. This wasn't just his loss. It was proof of a deeper rot in the very system meant to protect. And as the fire roared its final chorus, one question burned hotter than the flames themselves. How many more lives would be left in ashes before the world finally said, enough? The time the last flame died, his home was gone. The walls that had sheltered him, the memories that told his family's story, all reduced to ash. Yet in that destruction, something else began to rise. Truth. The videos recorded by neighbors spread quickly, sparking outrage across the city and beyond. People saw not just a fire, but the quiet violence of indifference, the kind that doesn't need weapons to destroy, only arrogance and hate. For him the pain was heavy, but it became fuel. As mayor, he stood before the same community that had witnessed his humiliation and vowed change. His voice trembled with grief, but it carried strength, a reminder that survival itself was an act of defiance. And he knew his house could be rebuilt, but the deeper wounds of betrayal, of prejudice, would take far longer to heal. This was never just about one man, or one fire. It was about a system that decides, too often, whose lives are worth saving, and whose can burn. It was about the thousands of untold stories, where the victims never had the title or platform to make the world listen. And so the question remains, how many more homes, how many more lives, must be reduced to ashes before justice is more than a promise? Before every cry for help is met with action, not silence. The fire may have ended, but the fight for equality still burns. And what we do with that flame is up to us.